Hi there, it's Denise Eckert from the Relaxation Lounge. And I love bringing people on here to help you create a happier and more joyful lifestyle. And today I have Kimberly Spencer, who's an award-winning high-performance trauma-informed coach and trainer. She's an Amazon bestselling author, a TEDx speaker, and the founder of crownyourself.com. And she helps visionary leaders transform their self-limiting stories, build their empire, stand out fearlessly, and make the income and impact that they deserve. And today we're going to talk about how to operate in our zone of genius. And what we're going to talk about is achieving alignment, fulfillment, and purpose. You know, that work-life balance in our business and our personal life. Well, welcome, Kimberly.
Thanks so much for having me, Denise. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Wonderful. So can you tell us how you started this journey on helping people the way you do?
Yeah, I started out, I've always been in the business of transforming people's stories. It was just in a different modality. I started out in Hollywood and I was writing screenplays. And I thought that that was my dream, was to be the female Clint Eastwood and write my own work, produce it, direct it, and whatnot. And to support myself in Hollywood, I got a job teaching Pilates. And Pilates was really helpful for me because back then I was going through a 10-year battle with an eating disorder, and it was the only form of exercise I'd ever found that actually made me feel good in my body. And so I started teaching Pilates to support my career in entertainment. I got the opportunity to have a feature film produced, and I was in the process of writing that while teaching Pilates. And through that, I found once my film got produced and distributed and I was at the premiere, I was surprised that I was only about 90% fulfilled. And then same while I was still loving my journey teaching Pilates and I was loving the client results that I was getting, within a year of beginning teaching, I became the highest paid youngest instructor teaching at the studio and most fully booked. And I saw these two paths that I really liked both of, but neither fulfilled me 100%. And so after the film got distributed, what I found out was 2 weeks later, one of the kids who attended the premiere, I got a text from my friend I had given tickets to her to bring her friends, because when you write a movie, you get tickets and you pass them out like candy, at least I did. And she said, "I just want to let you know your film changed that kid's life." And I was like, "Wait, what? Really? That film?" And she said, "Yeah, he was headed down the same path as the main character. He was going into trying to fit in and doing the partying scene. And then he saw your film and he saw where that could lead. And he decided to change his life." And I said, that is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to transform people's stories, but I didn't know how. And at the same time, I had an opportunity to come on board as a consultant due to my Pilates background for a backstretching device that was being taken to market. And I saw the value of the product and said, I don't just want to be a consultant, I want to be a partner in this company. And so for 2 years, I worked with that company to take that product to market. I got to see it featured in the big billboards in Times Square. I got to pitch it to the first round of Shark Tank auditions. Like, it was a super fun experience until I found out that my business partner wanted to buy me out. And I was devastated, not only because it happened 3 months before I was supposed to get married to my husband, but I just saw 2 years of my work and I was like, well, I was constantly searching for that alignment piece, because I thought maybe if I make enough money in this business, then I'll go off and create my own thing. But I committed myself to that and I was just devastated. And so 3 weeks before I got married, we signed the buyout agreement. I got married. I raced off to my honeymoon for 6 weeks in Italy with my husband. And during our honeymoon, I was like, what am I going to do when I get back? Because I had all these seeming unrelated fields of interest. I liked Hollywood. I liked making content and making movies and making stories and writing stories. And I loved fitness and I loved health and I loved business and I loved relationships. And I'd figured out all these pieces. And I remember after way too many espressos, I leaped off the couch and I said, "Crown yourself." And my husband's like, "What's that?" I said, "I have no idea. It's the name of my company though." And I said, I think it's something like Marie Forleo. And but I started operating in what I call productive procrastination, where for a year and a half, I didn't make any money in my business simply because I was still so crushed by the whole buyout experience, because it was the first time I'd ever negotiated with lawyers and realized that they don't send you the nicest emails when they're not on your side. And that experience was all of the fears that I'd had from my body image stuff and then my relationship stuff that I thought I'd healed and I'd never had show up in my business, because I'd always been very audacious with my ass. When I wanted to go for something in my career, I would go for it. But suddenly this was all brought to light, and so I was imprisoned in the dungeon of doubt, and I wouldn't put myself out there. I would do all the fun things in business, like building a website, all the safe things, getting a domain name, like even if they weren't safe, like, but spending thousands of dollars on a fancy website that had no purchase page. But that was because those were things that made me feel safe. And so for a year and a half, I made no money in my business until I found out I was pregnant. And then I was like, this person is not going to be the mother of my children. Because for that year and a half, because what happens when you get stuck in productive procrastination and you're doing all the things that are like easy but not actually requiring courage, is you can get stuck in a big time blame, complaining, shame game. And that's where I was, and that's where my mindset was, and that was not the person that I wanted to be the mother of my child. So I immediately hired a coach. I got certified in NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnosis. Within a few months I got my first $2,000 client, and then my first $5,000 client, and then I just grew from there. Support, and now to the point where we've been able to live in Australia, and I've been able to support my family living abroad for 2 years, and it's been an amazing journey. So much so that we had another baby.
Wow. And it sounds like you went through quite a few bouts of stress, just, with the contract falling through, and then, right, the timing with getting married. And it's just all that unsettling uneasiness. But I mean, I just love the work that you do. So now, how can we work in our zone of genius?
Ah, my favorite topic. So the zone of genius is really a magical place because it goes against what all the plagiarized programming and societal conditioning of things being really hard, and success having to come as a sacrifice. Because when you are in your zone of genius, and you'll know it by how it feels, when you're in your zone of genius, that's like where you could be in that for hours and you have more energy coming out of it than you did going in. Like, I know if I'm on back-to-back coaching calls for 5 hours, I'm going to have more energy by hour number 5 than I did even at hour number 1. And I'm a pretty energetic person. And that's just a sign of living in the zone of genius. The other part of the zone of genius is that it takes a bold move. It takes courage to lean into that space, because we think, because it's our mode, it's our genius, we don't realize how genius it actually is. And if you've experienced conditioning of the beliefs of like you have to be humble and you have to like downplay your successes and those sort of beliefs, then your zone of genius is going to feel like, well, everybody thinks this way, and no, they don't. Like, everybody does things this way. Everybody can organize a process like this. Everybody can challenge like this. Everybody can do this. So you'll reason yourself out of being in your zone of genius, or at least as you start to get used to being comfortable in being in that space. Like, it's also, I like to think of that space as also being the flow state as well, where you're so in it that you could do it for free all day, every day. You don't, because your work is of massive value and you deserve to be well paid for your zone of genius. That's why it's your zone of genius. The big difference is looking at what are these, what to really delineate what your zone of genius is. You have to also know what your zone of competence is and your zone of excellence. So the zone of competence is all those things that you can do. So for example, when I first started my business, I can build a website. I can post on social media. I make really pretty images in Canva. Like, those are all things that I can do, but if I do those for several hours, I feel drained. I feel kind of tired. I need a break. I need to step away from my screen. Like, I don't feel that like excitement and vigor and energy. So those are all things that are in my zone of competence. Then there's a zone of excellence, and this one's the trickier one because the zone of excellence is really where you've been praised for that. So many people, I've had many people praise me for my processes and for my systems. Like in my Communication Queens program, my clients are like, "Oh my gosh, like you're able to break down a process so efficiently, and here's all the 15 steps that we need to do and the boxes we can tick and how we can delegate that." And I can create a process and organize systems like a mofo, but it doesn't light me up. It like I can do it, and I like to do it, but it doesn't. If I'm in that space for hours upon hours, then after I get through with like figuring out the puzzle, like I can set a process up, but doing it on repeat is like soul sucking for me. And my zone of genius really comes in creating, connecting, and challenging. That is my zone of genius where I thrive. So it doesn't have to be like I thrive writing X, Y, and Z. I don't limit the zone of genius to that. You can chunk up to seeing what are those common things that you do on a regular basis that make you feel more energized, that are almost like who you naturally were or who you were told not to be, and then being in that space. So for me as a child, I was told not to challenge. Like that was my growing up. I grew up with an addict, and as a 5-year-old, I believe we're blessed with the children that we need, not to remind us of who we actually are. And so I would, call my dad out on his behavior when he would come home drunk. And no one really wants their 5-year-old challenging their behavior, but that's what I would do. And that energy of challenging was something that I was shamed for. I was told not to do that. And now I get paid very well by my clients to be able to do that for them. But I had to reconnect with that space of who I was as a child. It's like my 4-year-old right now, I see him, he's fascinated by math and science, and he loves numbers, and he loves adding, and so he loves arithmetic, and he wants to be an astronaut. And so he may turn out to be an astronaut. I fully support his dream in that. He may also want to build rocket ships or build something. So I know that his zone of genius, and you can kind of tell what your zone of genius is by what you did at around 4, 5, 6 years old, because what you did and who you were in that space. And so I look at my 4-year-old, and he's like building things, he's creating things, he's constant. So I'm like, I won't be surprised if he wants to build rocket ships like Elon Musk, and I would not be surprised if he flies to the moon as the dancing showman astronaut. But for me, what I wanted to be the writer, the director. I was organizing my community, the kids in my community into plays. I was hosting and showcasing transformative stories of princesses who would rise from the rags and riches into becoming and claiming their throne and taking their kingdom back from the evil queen. And I would always be staging and creating these very dramatic shows that were always about princesses. Well, now I have a company called Crown Yourself. I am technically the director of the show because I'm directing my team. If you're the producer of the show, if you're financing it yourself, or if it's financing itself, you're the producer, the showman. So I'm in the program, in the doing the interviews, being on podcasts like this. So I'm getting to be all those pieces that I was when I was 4, 5, 6 years old. It's just not in the vein that I thought it would be as, Meghan Merkel, or or in Hollywood.
Wow. And I think about when I was that young, it's hard to think about that far back, but I always like collaborating, and I like getting groups of people together. And throughout my years, I've organized conferences, and I've organized this, and I've organized that. And I was always in that flow zone, and it's so important to reach that flow zone in our lives.
Yeah.
But, but for me, like I always stress on people, find your flow zone, but don't stay there. Give yourself a break. Like, find that balance.
Yeah. Allow yourself to play in that space, because you can be in the flow zone. And it was interesting. I had a client She was a CEO, and her genius zone, she didn't even realize it, was what had made her so successful as a CEO. And she's just kind of like stumbled upon, like, I'm just going to create my business. How hard can it be? And her genius zone was in connecting and in building powerful relationships, which served her in sales. And she just did that. And she left men who were, she was in a predominantly male dominated industry. She had men wondering, like, I don't know what she does, but she's really good at it. And so she needs to be at this table. They didn't know why, but she would just automatically be like, oh, well, this person needs to be connected with this person, and this person needs to be connected with this person. And that automatically, she would just create business transactions by just interacting with people. And so it was really from being in that space of that flow, and also allowing yourself to be in the balance of understanding when you're in the flow zone, and when you also can be working at living life, like just living, instead of the high that comes from being in the flow zone constantly. Because you do also need to have, like, I have two kids, so I'm not going to be spending 10 hours a day coaching my clients. I limit it so that I can spend time with them, and that's where my priorities are as well. And but I have seen a direct correlation between the amount of income that a business owner is making and the amount of time that they spend in their genius zone. Like, when you can figure out what that is and then delegate to other people's zones of genius, like for example, my operation manager, Marie, she is a spreadsheet queen. She is just like, she makes the most beautiful spreadsheets. And I love a very well organized, beautifully put together spreadsheet. I love seeing everything like organized, but I don't want to maintain it. Like, that's not my zone of genius. Her zone of genius is maintaining those spreadsheets and making sure that everything is like follow and on track and the operations are working. And I'm like, okay, yes, that's where you can start to really start to grow as a business owner and as a company, when you start hiring out for other people's zones of genius, where typically, because I used to have the scarcity mindset where I would say, oh, I have to do it all myself. And being in that space of I have to do it all myself, thus I was operating more in my zone of competence rather than in my zone of genius, because your zone of genius is going to come at it, you're going to sacrifice something, to whether it's sacrificing time in your zone of genius, or sacrificing the ability to surrender the control and give it to somebody else who their zone of genius it actually is. And so when you are able to find that, what is your zone of genius, and then you're able to delegate to other people's zones of genius, that's how you can expand rapidly.
Yeah, I agree with that. And a lot of times we do work in our level of competence to play safe, to play
Oh yeah.
small. And how do we step over that line? Because we all do it, you know, we all do it. We all play safe and small. And it's hard to go into that genius zone.
It starts with courage and space. So removing ourselves from the mindset that we have to be doing, and that also from the belief that it has to be hard. Like, I recently had a conversation with my husband, and I was just having some anxiety around something. And I said, I realize my limit is now 2 hours of anxiety. And then after that, I'm not going to worry about it. Like, after that, like, I just realized I said, how much time is really required for me to be concerned about this issue, rather than, and before it would have been like a 2-day thing. So the time frame shortens. It's getting into the practice of living and operating in that zone of genius, getting into having the courage to actually give yourself this space to say, to claim that this is what your zone of genius is, and to own it. Because when you own it, then you can hold yourself accountable to that space. But most people aren't claiming it. They aren't even recognizing their genius in themselves, because they're not celebrating themselves enough for the things that they really do well. Because I don't think that we fare well focusing only on our weaknesses and only on those places that we need to grow. Like, yes, you can, there will always be more growth. There will always be. That's part of being on alive on Earth school.
Yeah.
But the but finding that courage to lean in, claim what is your zone of genius, and and then check yourself when you're in the space, and you can feel it on a daily basis. You can feel it when you're like, okay, I've been working on this project for an hour. How do I feel? Do I feel like I could keep going and like I'm so excited? Or do I feel like maybe this is something that I should be delegating? Maybe this is something that I should put down because that's somebody else's zone of genius. Maybe this is maybe I'm feeling drained. Okay, that's not my zone of genius. So play with what is. Like what are those things that you do during your day that really light you up? Like my husband, cooking. Like he just can nerd out over like different types of butter. Like it's amazing. And it lights him up. And it's certainly nothing that it lights me up because I burn toast regularly. So, but that's the thing is like that's his zone of genius. That's one of his spaces of the creating, of the putting these ingredients together that he loves to do. And so that's something that lights him up. And so it's going to be different for every person. And it's owning your uniqueness and what makes you special and what makes you different and what really, because that is something that is part of the reason why you're here on this planet, is to serve with that.
Absolutely. Now, are there any steps that we can take to increase our courage to take that step?
Well, first, recognizing what you're hiding from. So sometimes, like when I work, because I work with a lot of high achievers, sometimes that act of courage is actually giving yourself a break. Sometimes that act of courage is taking a nap. Sometimes that act of courage is actually saying, okay, I've done enough for today. And have I been working in my genius zone or have I not been? And just allowing yourself to assess based on how you feel. If you're feeling drained, tired, maybe you need a break. Maybe you're not living in your zone of genius. So allowing yourself to be in that constant dialogue of questioning and asking yourself, that's step one, just to become aware of the feelings that you have as you're doing your day-to-day activities. And then you're going to find those few little niggling ideas that those few, like maybe it's reaching that back out to that one person, or maybe it's making that sales call, or maybe it's sending that email and to that potential strategic partner. Like you're going to have those little niggling things that you're going to notice kind of just pop in from time to time that are just like, oh yeah, I gotta lean into that. Or it's like, oh, maybe I'll do that. Those are the ones that you want to lean into right away, because those little nudges are saying like that might be your act of courage, because typically we'll want to put off those things that scare us, those things that will keep us those things that will move us out of the familiar. And so for some clients it is, responding to that email that's that potential $30,000 client. And sometimes it is that because you're so used to living in scarcity that, oh my gosh, what if it actually was that easy and somebody just responds to an email and decides to pay you a whole bunch of money to work with you? Like that's a possibility. But it's typically those little things that are like, I really need to cancel that workshop, or I really need to lean in and actually host that workshop, or I need to respond to that person. So those, you're going to listen to what it is that you're avoiding. And that list of what it is that you're avoiding, when you start to pay attention to that, that's what you can lean into to really start strengthening that courage.
Wow, that's really powerful. Is it, yeah, it's those little things that you really, okay, why am I avoiding this? And why am I, and it is because you need that little nudge, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just those little universal nudges of like, you can go here, you can go this way. You can make more money. It's safe to make more money. You can build your business. And because it's our egos want to keep us small. Like we want to stay in the familiar, and going into the unknown is scary. So becoming aware of the thoughts of those little nudges, of those things that will push you a little bit just into that zone of unfamiliarity, those are the things that's where all the growth is.
Wonderful. Okay, so now we're going to start wrapping this up. Do you have any other amazing words to share with our audience today?
just celebrate yourself. Find those things that you do so well and that you can really own the fact that you do those really damn well and that you're damn good at what you do. And whether it's, you make beautiful backdrops or you create amazing succulent dishes or you're a great mom or whatever it is, whether or you're a fantastic coach or you're really good at writing, like whatever it is, really take the moment to acknowledge that within yourself and just explore how you can do more of that, because when you are living in your zone of genius, I believe that flow state, that energy of that you get from being in your zone of genius, that's how we transform this planet. That's how we transform the world, because the energy that you're in, it's coming from that space of love, of joy, of courage, of leaning into that, and that's raising the vibration consistently. And if we can do that on a daily basis, woo, this world will change for the better.
Yeah, I agree with you. Wonderful. Now, is there anything you can offer the listeners here?
Yeah, if you want to learn how to access your zone of genius even more, you can definitely hop onto my YouTube channel for Queen TV and check out some of the additional resources and videos. I've done several videos on how to differentiate what is your zone of genius and finding that space. And if you want to access that love within you for that zone of genius, for living and operating from that space of just love for who you are, what you do, and the unique gifts that you have, head on over to crownyourself.com and you will get a pop-up to my love hypnosis.
Wow. I love hypnosis. That I'm a hypnotherapist as well, and I find it so amazing.
It's powerful. It's
Really
super
is.
powerful.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. So I'm going to be putting all your contact information in the show notes and wherever it's posted. So yes, feel free to contact Kimberly if you have any questions or you'd like to explore how to work in your zone of genius. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Denise. It's been a pleasure.
If you're looking for more ways to reduce the stress in your life, please visit www.therelaxationlounge.info. Here I've got access to a free Facebook page where you can get support, information on the podcast where I interview different individuals who share their techniques to help you reduce your stress, plus a membership that you can join where you can come and do stress-reducing practice on demand anytime you need to reduce the stress in your life and create more happiness in your world. I'll see you in the lounge.